Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co, and today I'm reviewing Mini Rogue, a solo and two-player dungeon crawling experience that, well, it's meant to be short, it's meant to be small, it's meant to be giving you an abstracted dungeon crawling experience as you go through a bunch of levels of dungeons, fighting bosses, taking out, engaging with different cards, and all of that. The basic core gameplay is you're going through different levels over here: 1, 2, then a boss, 1, 3, and 4, then a boss, 5, 6, 7 boss, 8, 9, 10 boss across 4 floors of a dungeon. You'll be going through different bosses, and you'll have that final boss at the end who you're trying to, well, defeat them. That's the ultimate goal. You're going to have your character, and you're engaging with dungeon cards. Now in the game, you can only go to the right or downwards, effectively meaning you're going to inherently be moving down to this final card, and you're not going to be able to interact with everything along the way. That represents a floor. So you can interact with this first card over here, you can deal with the choice over there, maybe you share a meal, we'll go ahead and go down 1 food, and then go up 3 health, 1, 2, 3, and then as soon as that card is resolved, as soon as you've made your choice, you flip the card to the left and to the right, and that represents your choice. Are you going down, or are you going across? This represents the idea of that you're always going to have two choices as you slowly navigate your way through this dungeon down to the bottom, or not always two choices. If you find your way in a corner, then you only have one choice there on in. So to a certain extent, you are motivated to start moving through that middle to keep your sense of freedom and choice alive as long as possible, although at a certain point, you will have to make bad decisions. So over here, we can go to Empty Shelter. We can go down to this card over here, where we can roll the die to see what we get. Many of the cards are going to give you choices where you engage with enemies and or interactions, where you roll dice, potentially the dungeon dice, and your own die, determining what happens. The dungeon die will determine what number happens, and your white dice, which you're going to be rolling more of as you level up, those determine whether you get successes or not. 5s and 6s on those dice are successes, which means leveling up slowly throughout the dungeon, getting more experience points, and ultimately rolling more dice increases your chance of being able to do things in this game. So maybe we move down to the armory, where we go ahead and have a choice of we roll the dice and try to see whether they get rusty dagger, fair longsword, pristine battle axe. From there, maybe we resolve that, and we see this way. Great, we have a treasure card. We can go ahead and move to the trap or the treasure card. You know which one I want to go with. So the trap does have the potential of earning us more XP. The treasure gives us benefits. Which way do we want to go? Maybe no, the trap's going to lose this XP. I apologize, I misread that. The traps will lose this XP, so we are going to go ahead and move to the treasure card, and you're having these encounters as you go. You're dealing with trap cards, you're dealing with treasure cards, you're dealing with monsters, and eventually you'll hit the boss. Not at the end of the first level. When you're done with the first level, you'll go ahead and make your way to the second level. You'll move this down, you'll reset your card row, and then you'll eventually deal with this boss down over here, where you have to fight back and forth with them as you go. Monster fights basically involve you attacking them, then them attacking you, going back and forth until eventually someone wins. Ideally, you want to win your first boss, because there's 4 of them, and you have to stay alive long enough. The basic gameplay as far as your mechanisms that you're working with is you're working with an XP track that you're slowly going to level up, which will give you more white dice that you roll, which helps you over there, that helps your general strength, attack, your success chances, and all of that. You have your armor, which will negate enemy attacks, which is very helpful if you can level up your armor. Maybe you head to the armory and you get some armor, or whatever it is, you get something that can help you over there. You get to the HP, which is going to be where you die if you run out of HP. You have your food, which is important, because as you move from level to level, you have to pay a food or lose health or XP or whatever, so you have to pay food to keep moving to the next level. You have your gold, which will be useful to go ahead and buy things when you encounter merchants or different things like that. And then you have a variety of potions that all have their abilities or ways that they can augment or give you some sort of buff or help against the things that you're facing in the dungeon. From there, lastly, you have your actual character. Your character has a unique character with their ability. Once you utilize them, you're going to go ahead and flip them over, where you can no longer use their ability until you move to the next floor or whatnot. And that is basically Mini Rogue. 9 cards on the table, running through those 9 cards, that represents a level. You're not going through all 9, you're going to be going through 5 of them. Then you go to the next level, rinse and repeat until you make your way, alive or dead, through the entire dungeon. Which brings us to the review part of things, starting with ease of play. And ease of play is, the rules, this game is fairly easy to dive into, fairly short. This is a tiny little rule book, not a lot going on here. A lot of small information you have to go through, potentially feels a little longer than the game it is, but all said, still an easy rulebook to go through, teach, and play. Not that I've taught this game, I've only played this game solo. We'll get to that shortly. Table space is everything you see here. Incredibly accessible as far as table space. Game time, I actually find can run longer than those 30 minutes. I would say even on subsequent plays, I still found that 30 minutes was probably an ambitious play. Maybe players are just going through it faster than I am, but I found that I took my time in the cards and tried to figure out, okay, do I want to go this way and that? And even just reading the cards isn't always the quickest. It's not the most absorbable, comprehensible level information on the cards as far as getting what the card does. And so I found that even on subsequent plays, I was probably leaning closer to 40-50 minutes, and my first play was closer to an hour. That might just be a me thing, but just referencing it because as a shorter, accessible dungeon crawl, while an hour or 40 minutes even is not that long, it's just worth noting for a game that is on the smaller side otherwise. Past that, as far as player count, this is a 1 to 2 player experience. I only played it solo myself on Board Game Geek. I know it's rated as best with solo by a long shot. It seems to be catered towards a solo game while giving you the potential for 2 players if you so choose. But for me, I've only dived into the solo, so I can only comment on the solo play. As far as what I like, the table space is the first thing. The table space, accessibility, all that gives you a very accessible dungeon crawler on your table. This is a very easy game to get up and set up and to go through, tear down, move to the next level. If you're tired of larger, gigantic games that offer a whole lot of game but at a cost, at a premium, well, this will not have that problem. But as far as, and then additionally, as you level up as you play, you have a sense of escalation as you go through the dungeon. You will start off feeling incredibly weak, unable to do anything, scared of every single monster you run into. But as soon as you get to level 2, there is already that sense of escalation of, well, now I'm rolling a whole extra dice. My powers literally just doubled in the dungeon. And level 3 takes a little longer to get to, and it's not as dramatic because you're going from 2 to 3. It's not as dramatic as that first doubling. But I would say once you get to level 2, you start to hit a little bit of a power curve where you are getting more done as you go through, and it doesn't feel as much like pure survival as it does like an actual dungeon crawler, an actual battler. That said, the final boss is pretty brutal, so yeah, I haven't won that yet. Anyways, that's as far as what I like. As far as what I don't like, the game feels very random. At the end of the day, there is just so much dice rolling for every little thing, and every spot you go on involves rolling 2 dice, you know, well, not everyone, but most of them involve rolling 2 dice, seeing if you succeeded and what you get if you succeed. There's a lot of dice rolling in this game, from the battles, from the encounters, from even what cards show up to get in your way or give you options. There is a lot of luck in this game. This game does not feel like, your player agency feels mostly like you're making the obvious choice in the game, as opposed to really making tricky decisions, but it's mostly dice rolling and then a sense of adventure, a sense of journey, but not a sense of decision making as you go through. And that lack of decision space around this game, I appreciate and respect the accessibility of it, but it seems to come at the cost of making decisions that I felt were meaningful. I say I felt because you may feel differently, but I definitely felt that the decision space in this game is on the minimal side. And it doesn't feel rewarding even when you win because of that. Meaning it's not about winning or losing. Now, I haven't won the whole game, but I've made my way through multiple floors and won different creatures and all that, but it doesn't feel rewarding when I win a creature, as it doesn't feel rewarding or punishing when I lose a creature. It just feels random to me. It feels like I'm given 2 choices, I make the usually obvious decision, and that's where the game fizzles out and the sense of rolling dice and just doing things continues. Past that, there's just not enough general decision space across 8 floors. For a game that's going to run 40 minutes to an hour, at least for me, I just found that the decision space was not enough. If this was a 15-20 minute experience where I was a little like, hey, you know, I got 20 minutes to fill, let me go ahead and dive into something quick, even if the decision space were lighter, it would be less of a problem for me. For a game that's 40 to 60 minutes where I could be playing a different game that offers me a lot more, this game gave me portability, easy to dive into, but very minimal decision space for a high play time, which is just not worth it for me. As far as what I can see others not liking, the variability, the replayability might be a concern. You don't have a lot of dungeon cards, and you're going to go through most of them in a single play, and so while obviously the order in which they come out can change, you're not going through a lot of a sense of adventure past your first play. You'll see the same things, you'll do the same things. If you're looking for a dungeon crawler experience that offers you a lot of reasons to dive back into it, I don't think this one has that. Even on my second play, this was just the same stuff again and again. So we have a game that runs 40 to 60 minutes, gives me very minimal decision space, and gives me very minimal variability and reason to dive in, which meant my second play of this was arguably just painful. Which brings me to final thoughts on this one, which is not pleasant as you've seen so far. I did not enjoy Mini Rogue one bit. This is one of the less satisfying experiences I've had. I think the game's fine if you're looking for a procedural game that offers you table space and accessibility and a little abstraction of dungeon crawling mechanics. I just felt the game wasn't variable, was long, and offered me minimal decisions, which just did not make for a good combination. I think the redeeming quality would have been if this were a 15-minute experience, but it's not. At least for me, it's definitely not. And so, Mini Rogue is a game that I personally can't recommend. It might work for you, but for me, it's a 2 out of 5. This is a game that I did not enjoy playing. I would not want to dive back into it again, and I mean, it's decently rated. I'll note that. It's decently rated, so this might work for you. But for me, this one is absolutely a pass, unfortunately. As far as other game recommendations, if you're looking for other things that I thought this would be more akin to and give me that experience, One Deck Dungeon is going to give you another smaller, soloable dungeon crawling experience, more abstracted and small. And then Set a Watch is not really the same genre, but Set a Watch will give you a lot more decision-making choices in a game of survival as you try to stay by your campfire and just, well, survive the night. But those are two other games that I can recommend. As far as Mini Rogue, it might work for you. It did not work for me. In any case, I am Alex Ratcliffe from Board Game Co., and as always, have a good one.